Here's a short explanation of Deadwood 1876. The game from Facade Games is for 2 to 9 players, ages 13 and up. The average game time is about 20 to 40 minutes, with the objective of the game to be the last man standing with the most gold. What's in the box? You got 3 establishment discs, 1 satchel, 9 sheriff badges, 5 pairs of different colored dice, 9 player cards, 25 safe cards, and 50 Deadwood cards. Setup will depend on the amount of players in the game. First, the establishment discs need to be placed in the center of the playing area. If there is only 2 to 3 players, only use 2. Leave out the hotel. 4 or more players, use all 3. Each player needs to pick a character card. Once everyone has picked a character, take the corresponding sheriff's badge for each character and place it into the satchel. Draw out one of the stars and place it on the gem theater. Then draw out another star and place it on the next disc, and so on until all of the players have been drawn. In a 4-player game, leave one of the discs empty. Shuffle the Deadwood cards. Deal 4 cards face down to each player. In an 8 or 9-player game, only deal 3 cards. Go through the safe cards and find the 5 cards with the silver border. Remove these cards from play. If you're playing with a more experienced group, these cards can be added in to add extra elements to the game, but are not needed for a normal game. Shuffle the rest of the safe cards. Deal 3 face down in the center of the playing area. In an 8 or 9-player game, only deal 2. Now deal 2 safes to each player face down. Any remaining safes are put back in the box without being looked at. All players now look at their 2 safe cards. They can choose to keep 1 card. The card that they do not wish to keep, they pass face down to the player on the left. Once all players have done this, players can now look again at their 2 cards and shuffle them and place them face down like this. Using the black die, everyone rolls to see who goes first, followed clockwise around the playing area. On your turn, you will need to play one of your Deadwood cards from your hand. The Deadwood cards can be used as either a special item at the bottom of the card, or the gun on the top of the card. If you choose to use the special item, simply discard the card to the discard pile and follow the instructions of that special item. If you choose to use your gun, it can be used one of 2 ways. In a robbery, for this option, you are going to try and steal another player's safe. You lay down your card in front of the safe that you are trying to steal. The player whose safe you are trying to steal will also need to choose one of their cards from their hand in order to defend themselves. The 2 players now grab the appropriate colored die based on which weapon that they have played. Depending on what type of gun you play, will give you better odds at winning the battle. Once both players have their dice, they roll at the same time. The player with the higher number wins. If it is a draw, then re-roll until there is a winner. If the defender of the safe wins the battle, nothing happens. The safe remains and the turn is over. If the attacker wins the battle, they take that safe and look at what's inside. They can now shuffle that card in with their remaining safes and place them face down in front of them. The other option for your gun is to duel another player. If you choose to duel, place one of your cards in front of that player's character card. The player being challenged will also need to choose one of their cards from their hand in order to defend themselves. The battle works the same way as the robbery. The player with the higher roll wins. If the defender wins the battle, then nothing happens and the turn is over. If the attacker wins the battle, then the attacker may swap location of stars with the defender if they are in 2 different establishments. If the 2 players are in the same establishment, the attacker can move the defender's star to another establishment of their choice providing that the new location is not already full. If you are playing with 2 to 5 players, there can be only 2 people per establishment. In a game of 6 to 8 players, 3 people per establishment, and in a 9-player game, it's 4 players per establishment. Now let's go back for a moment and take a look at one of the special item cards, the holster. This item is a bit different because it can be played even when it is not your turn and can only be played right before a robbery or a duel. If you are not the attacker or defender in a battle, you can choose to help one of them by playing your holster. The person being assisted can only use one holster in a battle. So, if more than one player chooses to help, they can pick which they wish to use and return the unused holster back to the player it came from. In the battle, the player who played the holster will also roll a die depending on which weapon is with the holster. The 2 dice are then added together to determine their score in the battle. At the end of any robbery or duel, any players who played a card, attackers, defenders, or holsters, put their played cards into the discard pile and then draw new cards from the Deadwood cards. Players should always have 4 cards in their hand at the start of any turn, 3 cards for any 8 or 9-player games. At the end of any complete round of play, there is a heist. Flip over the top safe in the middle of the table so that everyone can see the contents. Each player chooses one of their guns to play in the heist. Everyone should reveal their cards at the same time so that no one can change their mind once the cards are revealed. The heist works the same way as the robberies or duels. Players take their appropriate die and roll. The player with the highest roll takes the safe. They shuffle it in, face down, with their other safes, and then the play continues as before. After the third heist, or the second heist in an 8 or 9-player game, players will complete one last round before the end of the game. After the last turn is played, it is time for the badge round. Players who have badges in their safes are allowed to take 1 extra turn. If they have more than 1 badge, they will get more than 1 extra turn. Start with the tin, then iron, copper, silver, and finally gold. After each of the players who have badges take their extra turns, it's time for the final showdown. All players now reveal the contents of their safes. Players who are in the same establishment should total the amount of gold between them. The establishment that has the most gold will move on to the final showdown. If you are by yourself in an establishment and have the most gold of any establishment, you have won the game. The game is over. If there is a tie for the establishment with the most gold, the establishment that has the least amount of players in it will go to the final showdown. If it is still a tie, then all tying players move on. Players who are in the final showdown now select one of their cards from their hand to play, much like they do in normal duels. Each player should reveal their card at the same time. Players will collect their appropriate die for that card, plus, if they had any guns in their safe, they will collect those dice as well. Players then roll their dice and total their score. Players who lose the battle are not out just yet. They must flip over their character card to the black and white side, indicating that they are near death. Now another round begins, and the players choose another card from their hand to play in the showdown. Plus again, use the guns from their safe, and the process repeats until there is one player remaining alive, and that player is the winner of the game. Now before we mosey along, there's just 3 laws in Deadwood that all players need to follow. First, you can only shuffle your safe after gaining a new safe from a robbery or heist. You can always view your safes whenever you wish, but never move them around once they are in place. Second, you should never show your safes to other players. unless they have an action card that allows them to look. You can say whatever you want about your safes, but never show them. And third, there is a 3-safe limit. If you have 3 safes and you win a 4th, select which of the safes you wish to keep, shuffle, and place those face down. The 4th safe you do not want, you give to the player who has the least amount of safes. However, this law is not in effect once the badge round begins. And finally, there are some minor adjustments for a 2 or 3 player game. You should go around the table twice before each heist. The Stetson card will only allow you to look at 1 safe rather than 2, and holsters are played differently. You cannot play them out of turn. On your turn, you can choose to place a holster onto a particular safe, and if that safe is attacked, the extra gun is there to help defend it. Once that safe is attacked, the attached holster is then discarded. You can also attach a holster to a player's character card, and it will work the same way for any duels. These are just some of the basics for this game, but you'll find some other variations that you can try that are listed inside of the instruction booklet. Now, it's time to mount up and head west. Let's play.